We've got, again, it's a Zoom only presentation. Tonight we have a special guest. I know we've had Russ here several times in the past and it's been a couple of years. So really looking forward to his presentation tonight on the art of wildlife photography. Going back to the competitions for next year, the first competition will be February 5th. That's open. Second competition is April 2nd, and that's the theme on that one is leading lines. The next one will be June 4th, and that's open. August 6th is a theme night, and that is images taken at ground level. And then September 3rd is an open competition, and November 5th is the last competition of the year, and that is theme, and it's silhouettes. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Russ Burden. Again, thank you, Russ, for joining us tonight. I know I've learned quite a bit from the times that you've presented to us before.
There's going to be a test after, Mike, so take note. All right.
He's the owner of Russ Burden Photo Safaris, runs small group workshops in Tanzania, are the ones that I know he specializes in. And as well as I believe you also run some of them locally, but you said you haven't done as much of the local photography. He's been internationally published and writes photo tips for Outdoor Photographer website, multiple time winner of Nature's Best Wendland Smith Rice Award. It's been published numerous times in Outdoor Photographer magazine. His website, his wildlife and scenic images have appeared in calendars published by Self-Realization, Fellowship, Kodak, Audubon, Sierra Club, National Wildlife, National Geographic, Traveler, and more. Also, numerous safari photos have hung on the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. and the Ezeko Museum in South Africa. I know I've missed quite a bit. Hopefully most of that is accurate in that, but as you can tell just from those accomplishments in that, he's been an amazing photographer throughout the years. So, and again, we're really pleased to have you out here tonight. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over. If anybody has any questions, I can try to answer those. Otherwise, we'll turn it over to Russ for tonight's presentation.
Well, I guess that the turning over is officially happening here. So, yeah, thanks, Mike. Great introduction. I appreciate that. Short notice, but hey, let's make it happen. It's always great to share what it is that I know. The teacher gene certainly exists in me. I always love to share what it is that I know. Hopefully you people pick up tips and apply them and incorporate them into what it is that you do when you're out in the field and go from there. So a lot of you, I mean, I can't do a show of hands because I'm only seeing names now, but maybe just if you have, no, I don't see the speakers on either. But if you're into wildlife photography, I hope so. I've done it all. When it was funny when I was listening to you guys before talking about the wedding stuff, and I was doing weddings and high school seniors, and everything was augmented with flash. Even before it became a thing to do. And let me tell you, flash augmented in daylight, especially when there's sun, there's nothing like it. I don't want to say that you can increase your shooting span for, in essence, 12 hours of daylight, but you certainly get at least an hour to an hour and a half longer in the morning, and you can start an hour to an hour and a half before you would normally start if you were shooting at sunset. And it's just, if you're not into it, but you're into wildlife photography, I encourage you to do it. If you're into doing people photography, it's essential because, people with deep eyes and you can't see their eyes, same thing applies to animals. But if you can't see the eyes, if you can't see the facial expressions, if you can't see the emotions on the face of the people or on the face of the animals, you're not going to get as good a picture as if you were able to express those. So with that in mind, it's not going to be easy. It's become a lot more automated. Flash used to be everything. Get out your slide rule, get out your phone, not to make a phone call, but to get the calculator going, because you need to have all sorts of logarithmic things going just to get the exposure right. But when you do, it works out really well. It's worth the effort. It's worth the time. It's worth everything that you devote to put into it to improve your photography. Sadly, this show was created prior to me using Flash, but there's a couple examples that I've got in here when I was into using reflectors. And in essence, you get the same kind of effect, and you'll see the befores and afters on those. So with that in mind, I'm going to start to screen share here, and we'll get into the show. So we're all set to go. And if you have any questions, in that it's a small group, if you want to open up your mic to ask a question, usually what I do is I have people wait until the end. But, just as long as we're not inundated with questions, it's all good. So if you got a question or whatever, just let me know, and we'll see if we can share in due time to make that a little bit more time relative. All right. So to start off, let's face it, wildlife photography certainly is challenging. Lots and lots of concepts, aspects to think about to separate your pictures from what somebody else will just make a snapshot to say, hey, I went to wherever, and here's the shot of the bison, here's the shot of the elk, here's the shot of the deer, here's the shot of the elephant. But to make your photography stand out, incorporate these things into what it is that you do. During this presentation, what I'm going to do is share a lot of my techniques so that you can incorporate these into your repertoire each time you head out into the field. We want the crown crane to teach us how to be a better wildlife photographer. I guess I will act as the crown crane for this evening. Okay, this is the only slide that I'm going to read. Wildlife photography is a challenge. It requires patience, dedication, determination, frequent visits to your favorite locations, all mixed in with a bit of serendipity. But why does it seem that some wildlife photographers are, in quotes, luckier than others? Today, I'm going to share with you my tips and techniques that I use to make you one of the luckier ones. I'll discuss important concepts such as lighting, composition, proper head and body angles, backgrounds, time of day, and many other aspects to improve your captures. While there are additional factors that contribute to good image capture, these are some of the keys. It's my desire and my passion and enthusiasm. It's my desire to share my passion, enthusiasm, and knowledge with you guys. Absolutely research your subject. When you photograph wild, it's imperative you learn the subject's signals. What do these little movements, head turns, whatever, mean that each species is going to portray? Raised ears, what do raised ears mean? It's often a sign of alert behavior. They're alerted that there may be some sort of danger. So be careful, be very limited in your movement so that you don't scare the animal away. Are you getting too close? You really don't want to scare away your subject. Their body posture. Is the subject going to run away? Is it going to fly? Is it going to walk away? If you see any kind of skepticism in your subject, just back off, hold your ground. Don't make any further moves. You could be charged and you could get hurt seriously. especially if you're one of these people that go up to Yellowstone and try to get a close-up of the bison's eye and get trampled by the bison. What actions do the subjects show? How about birds? When they get ready to fly, usually they poop. Sandhill cranes, what they will do is they will put in this like pointing behavior where their head angle will get moved forward and they'll elongate their neck. What signals do the subjects portray? Be sure to study their eyes. Look for concerns. Look for alerts. Look for something that it may do. If you've had kids and you've read the signals that your kids give, after a while, you learn them, and animals will do the same thing. So learn to read those signals. Waterfowl. If the waterfowl flap their wings, they're going to bathe repeatedly, and then they'll dunk their head into the water and then kind of get up on their feet and shake. So if the animal is facing in the right way and everything comes together and you've got right shutter speeds, you can wind up getting some real powerful images with if you keep all of those things in mind. Okay, come on. Oh, okay. Time of day. Sunrise and sunset, obviously the best times are going to create the most striking images. Why? The light is warm, the tones are soft, contrast is not an issue. Front light or light that is just a bit off of axis of front light is the best angle. Point your shadow at the subject. If you point your shadow directly at the subject, it's front lit. Use that as a basic tool. I love sunrise. The animals are active due to the cooler temperatures. They need to feed. They've been sleeping all night. Many subjects, not all. As the sun gets higher, the angle and the color, they're not that conducive to getting good wildlife photos. If I could control just one aspect of every photo session that I encounter, it would be the light. It's all about the light. That's kind of my business slogan. Think about the word photography. Photography is made up of two components, the word photo and the word graphy. What does photo mean? Photo means light. What does graphy mean? Graphy means write. What are you doing? You're writing with light. You're painting the light that is on the subjects to your sensor. Make sure you paint when the light is the best. As I said, it's all about the light. Dawn and dusk provide pastel tones, the picture on the left. Look for it reflected in water and for good photo ops. Look, as you can see, the pink, the magenta gradation down to where it is that the egret is in the water. This happened to be the same egret, and it just hung out. It was fishing, it was hunting, and down in this place in Florida, and I was able to get the same one lit throughout the entire time. The first light of day, it's warm, it has golden yellow, and it has like a reddish hue. As the time goes on, the light's going to get a little bit bluer, cooler, and harsher in tone. Around 2 hours after sunset, the picture on the right, it's time to basically pack it in unless the action is really superior, or you get to use flash in a situation where it's conducive to using flash. Not every situation is, but when it is, I encourage you to incorporate its use. Again, it's all about the light, the last light of day. Okay, so this bison that was on the ridge in Yellowstone was shot at the very, very late light. in oh gosh, one spring. This was a spring trip. The colors are warm, the tones are pleasing, the tonal quality is pleasing. One thing to note about this picture too, this dish didn't happen to fall into place like this. I waited for the bison to portray some action, to do that sniffing of the air, to see what it is that is going on as far as females go, as far as what could be going on in the environment. The other aspect is that I got down low so that the clouds would frame the bison itself. When I set up the tripod, those clouds were going right through from the butt to where the mouth is. I wanted the clouds not to merge with the bison, but to be able to frame it. Look for those little details as to what goes on in the background can determine whether the picture is going to be a winner or whether a judge is going to say, oh, wow, I wish that you would have, and then fill in the blank, gotten down lower, gotten down higher, move to your left, move to your right. If you see variables, take advantage of them, utilize them. One thing that I say quite often is exhaust all possibilities. Take the shot, take the record shot, and then from there, what can you do to improve it? Look for those things. Look for all your options, because the more you incorporate them, the quicker your photography is going to reach that next level. Again, it's all about the light. So here we got a common vulture, but a passing cloud was cast across the shadows, cast the shadow, and shade went across the face of the vulture, but the background remained illuminated by the sun. It became a very, very much of a spotlight of a cloud on the vulture. The background stayed bright. So the vulture itself is darker than the background. You always want the subject to be a little bit more prominently lit than the background itself, because the brighter tones come forward where the darker tones recede. You want the subject to come forward and the darker tones to recede. So I took a glance over my left shoulder. I looked at the sky. I looked at where the sun was from behind a cloud. I looked at the position that the cloud was in as far as the wind. Was it moving? And would that vulture get lit? I told everybody in the group, wait, just wait here, 30 seconds. And within 30 seconds, watch carefully what happens. And it's very subtle. So this was 30 seconds prior. The cloud moved, the sun started to reveal itself, and voila. It's those little things. Just because you've got a vulture in your viewfinder doesn't mean it's going to wind up being a great portrait. Background out of focus, that worked real well. I'll do it one more time. Here's the before. Sun came out from behind the cloud. World of difference. So be cognizant of those things. Again, it's all about the light. Bright, overcast light sometimes works really, really well. It's very even. The contrast is soft. If the sky is a deep gray, though, you're going to get this bland tone and everything is just going to look very flat. But when you've got this bright overcast, you can actually make this work to your advantage. This was in my backyard. There's a squirrel eating grass, and the squirrel was active. He was fairly friendly, and I just waited. Got okay. So you guys mentioned that there's going to be a competition. I think you said November, where the theme was to get down low. Look what happens when you get down low as opposed to shooting down on the subject. Look what happens quite often to the background. That background goes totally out of focus depending on its distance and the focal length that you use. So I kind of smiled when I heard that you guys are going to do a shoot from down low, because that's one of my favorite spots from which to shoot. Sadly, my knees they scream at me at this point of my life, but I'll still go down on it. If I'm out in the field and I'm making pictures, I'm wearing knee pads in case I need to get down low. But most of my get down low stuff is on my belly.
Well, we now have those articulating screens, so we don't have to get down quite as low on the backs of our cameras.
But no, yeah, but that's just a screen. That's not the angle from which the picture is going to be made, though.
Well, on the mirrorless ones, you can see through the viewfinder there.
Okay. Oh, you mean as far as getting down on your knees?
Yeah, yeah, because you can put that
Oh,
and flip the screen up, and you don't have to get clear down on your hands and knees to see through it now. So
great.
I do that.
Maybe I will go mirrorless for the sake of
Yeah, I did do that a lot
it.
because you
Yeah.
don't have to get all the way down.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Uh, and that does tend to work well. So yeah, I would encourage you to do that. Good point. So the whole detail. So here you got a Cape Buffalo. Cape Buffalo, fairly dark. Cattle egrets. Cattle egrets are very bright. If this was a sunny situation, this was taken in the Ngorongoro crater. If this was taken on a sunny day, there's no way this picture could have been made. So the fact that it was bright overcast worked to the photographer, every photographer's, excuse me, advantage, and detail was held in the cattle egrets. I was able to bring out the shadow detail in the Cape Buffalo via Photoshop, and it all worked well. So don't be afraid to shoot in bright overcast light, but usually the animal needs to be doing something a little bit more special too, because the light is flatter. It doesn't have that drama and that purity that sunrise or sunset light has. Okay, so we talked about harsh light and prior to me using flash. So with regards to harsh light, it's just not conducive to good photography. What happens is you get these deep shadows, you get strong highlights. If you look at the lower right-hand corner, it's just about void of detail. And the contrast is just high, and the color is very blue, and I mean, it's nice. You find a halfway decent composition. This is at a tide pool at Bandon Beach, but the light and the color of the light really isn't great. So what did I do? I went back up to the shoreline, put my camera bag down, took my gold reflector out of the camera bag before I walked back to the tide pool, popped it open, used the gold side, and watch carefully what happens. Boom. So you get the nice warm light, you fill in the shadow detail before, cold in color, contrasty, a lot less contrast, but still punchy and fills in the shadows, and you get a much warmer tone. So augment the light when you can, use it to your advantage. Again, it's all about the light.
That's interesting that the gold reflector is something that is like really gets a lot of criticism for people photography, but here that made such an amazing difference between that before and after when you pulled that out compared to the scene right before that?
People photography, you really don't want to use it unless in I'm going to go out on a limb here. This isn't me divulging any political stance, but if you're a person and you want a goldish orange color, it could be used. So that's as far as I'll go, and leave it at that. So yeah, it usually doesn't work with people.
Yeah, it worked
That
great here though. That
Oh,
difference was
yeah, this was amazing. I mean, when I looked through the viewfinder at the difference, it was like, oh, all right, good. But it's just one of those, what did I say earlier? Exhaust all possibilities. All right. So try it. I can tell you right now with people, you don't need to bother to try it. Now you can use white, like a white reflector with people. That tends to work like with the soft boxes that you guys were talking about when you were doing the wedding stuff. So, it softens up the light and gives that wraparound effect. It almost mimics bright overcast light, filling in the shadows and taming those highlights. And that's what you want to do. If it's too contrasty, you want to up the shadows and you want to tone down the highlights. What does that softbox do? It allows you to do the same, as does the gold reflector. Actually, I do have some stuff in here with flash. I thought I didn't. All right, so and the other tool that I do use that I spaced out that was in the show is Flash. What it does is it's going to open up the shadows so that the viewers of your images can see into them. And as a result, the contrast is greatly softened. To project the beam of light, because a flash can only emit X amount of light, if you use a Fresnel lens, which is basically a magnifier, I can get my flash, I've got a Nikon SB5000. I can get that out with the Magmod to about 50 feet if I'm shooting wide open. And it really helps to augment and to do it in a positive way. So it's a big time investment. It's a big learning curve, but I encourage you to dedicate the time to it. You can see in here the little Fox kit, there's 2 highlights in the eyes, even on the shadow side. You can see where the light is coming from on the mountain goat. It's coming in basically from its semi-rear left. So how is it that the full right-hand side, its shadow side, is lit up? It's lit up because of the flash, and it really, really softens the contrast. Here's a fun example. This is another example of fill flash, and look at how the shadow side of the face of this lynx just pops out. The whole inside of this little log it's under would have been totally in shade, and there's even a highlight in both eyes. So it gives that feeling of a lot more life in the animal itself. Here's a really good example. So obviously I used a Magmod here because I really didn't want to get within 5 to 10 feet of this lion, and I wanted to be able to make the picture, bring it back to you guys to show the difference. So with that in mind, I decided to stay in the vehicle and use the Magmod. So this is the straight shot. This is the way it would look like. This was about 9:30, 10 o'clock out in the Serengeti, and the light the sun rises. We're 200 miles south of the equator. The sun rises fairly quickly and goes straight up. So you can see by the top of the main that the light is right now fully above the lion. And it hasn't gone over to the shadow side of the face as of yet. So the background is lit and the main is lit, and it's the opposite area that you want lit. You want to see the face nicely lit, but you don't necessarily want to see the background lit. How can you put light on the face if there is no light? Use flash. So I put the Magmod on, I use flash, and there you go. And you can see, I mean, it's the same lion. It puts a highlight in the eye. If I was going to enter this into competition, I would tone down the brightness of the highlight in the eye. That's a very easy fix in Photoshop, but you can see that it puts light. I mean, even in the area in between the paws, down at the lower part of the mane, fully lit.
Yeah, and if you have your lighting assistant walk out there with a big softbox to get about 10 feet away from that lion, come up with
And then you can get a
also.
great shot of the lion attacking,
Exactly.
and you get these award-winning pictures. So can I hire you to be
There
my
you go.
lighting guy?
No, we'll stick with the Magmod effect. But this
Okay.
this is amazing though. That once again, that difference between just straight out of camera without any flash, that fill flash really makes a difference here.
I'm a firm believer in doing the befores and afters to show people, because if all you do is tell people, oh yeah, this is a great tool, this works well, but when you take the time to demonstrate what it can do by showing an example, then they see the real meaning behind it, and it just, the pictures don't lie. So. And thankfully the line itself was fairly cooperative, and it really didn't take long, because the flash and the Magmod were still on the camera when I took the straight shot, and all I did is turn the flash off. To do the Magmod shot, I turned the flash on. So once it gets to be about 9 o'clock, when I'm in Africa, when it's sunny, I have my flash at the ready, and just boom, put it right on the hot shoe, extend the Magmod out, and turn it on. And that takes all of, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds. You start to learn the process and you get it down pat. You're going to fumble in the beginning, but once you get it down pat, I mean, think about riding a bike. When you learn how to ride a bike, you scrape your knees a lot, right? Well, you're going to scrape your knees by getting some cruddy pictures in the beginning. But then again, you're going to be able to ride to, wherever it is that you need to go once you get good on the bicycle, and mom and dad say, okay, hey, go for the ride. Although back in our day, it was just go out. The biggie back in the day was, when the street lights come on, be home. And it's not like that anymore. It's a shame, but that's, we're getting off the photography thing here. All right, this is what the Magmod setup looks like. It's the flash that's on the camera, that rubber kind of boot will stick on magnetically, and there's a little bit of calibrating to do. And I always set it up as a kind of a learning process to see if people can figure it out, because I had to figure it out. And once you get the thing dialed in, it works great. You just extend it and turn the flash on. And if it's too much flash, you use the compensation on the back of the flash, and you can dial it down. If there's not enough flash, you use the compensation on the flash and give it +1, +2. If you're out of the range, if it's too far away, it doesn't matter if you go +3 or +4 if your flash has it. because you're too far away. There are limitations, but within reason, it works really, really, really well.
Hey, Russ, real quick question on that.
Go
So
ahead.
when you're using the flash like that, are you using that all in manual and making those manual adjustments to your flash, or is it you using like TTL and
Aperture priority.
uh-huh.
I set my aperture. Okay, so you do have sync speeds. I
Right.
don't want to make this a whole how to use a mag mod, but let me just give you the abbreviated version. Flash and the cameras will you need to marry that sync speed, usually at 2/50th of a second. I
Mhm.
know the new mirrorless cameras can sync faster. The problem is that the distance is also sacrificed. So even though you're shooting at, say, 1,000th of a second, a 1,500th of a second, you cut back the distance significantly.
Mhm.
So if you can still keep it at that 2/50th, remember that as a key component, you're going to catch on to this MagMod stuff very, very quickly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. If that makes sense to you, I may be talking, if you haven't used Flash outdoors, I may be talking, over people's heads. But if you have questions or anything like that, interject and I'll see if I can give you the abbreviated answer.
Yeah, it made perfect sense because if you go beyond that sync speed, unless you're put it in high speed sync, but as long as you're staying within your range, if you go beyond that and don't put it in high speed sync, you get that dark line that goes across and it doesn't
Yep.
work.
So
Yeah.
you understand the concept, but not everybody knows about the dark line as to where on across the frame that happens. But by understanding that concept, I encourage you to start using Flash if you're going to be doing wildlife or people stuff, because you're how you would be able to augment the light will really, really help your photography. Guarantee it. Guarantee it. All right, more about it's all about the light. So flash is the main light. Are there negatives about flash as a main light? Yes. So this was taken at one of the butterfly pavilions. The two butterflies, straight on flash, and it comes up contrasty. If you look at the butterfly on the left, the antenna, its left antenna, as it comes off its head, merges right in with the background. If you look at the right antennas, it looks as if it only has one antenna. Because what happens is the flash goes straight on and it shuts down very, very quickly and makes the background very black. The other significant piece here is that parts of the butterfly are white. And what happens to that detail? Totally blown out because the contrast becomes so severe. And the highlights on the flower buds also become fairly contrasty. And you get specular highlights that are a little bit tougher to control. So, what are some possibilities? Well, what if, based on the shutter speed, if you're, as we just discussed, the shutter speed, the sync speed is a 2/50th. Well, at a 2/50th, your ambient light, what if you slowed down the shutter speed and went to a 1/25th or a 60th or even a 30th, being on a tripod? What would that do to the background by going from a 2/50th to, say, a 30th? The background is going to, because you remember you're not affecting the light at that point because your aperture is staying the same. all you're doing, which is what the flash depends on, what you're doing is you're cutting down the exposure as far as the shutter speed so that the shutter stays open longer. What is that going to do? That's going to increase the amount of light that's falling naturally in the background. Well, look at what you get here when you do that. Boom. Still use flash, but by going down to I forgot what I did here. I don't have it. I'm looking on the other computer. I don't see it in the notes. But by using a slower than normal sync speed, because there's nothing saying you have to shoot at the 2/50th of a second that the camera syncs to, you're allowing more ambient background light to be recorded on the sensor, and this is what you get. So before and after, just by the only adjustment that I made was the shutter speed. So here I was in manual, I was in full manual. But this is what you get. And it works great. All right, let's go on to the topic of composition. From where do I shoot? It's easy to get excited every time you have an animal real close, especially if you're just getting into wildlife photography. So you got this animal that's real close and you go, oh my gosh. The only thing that goes through your head is, I can't believe how close I am. I have to get some photos. And your shutter finger becomes extremely active and you just start to blast away. Learn to become, as I said earlier in the show, one of the luckier photographers. And the way you become luckier is by taking command of the situation you're presented. So look at where the hooves of this mountain goat are. There's two on the back rock. There's two on the front rock. There's a gap between the two. And if to really just prove to you, look at the little tuft of hair towards the top of the goat. All right. Look at where the goat is. I made one move. So if I was up on Mount Blue Sky, sorry, for the very first time, and here's my very first mountain goat, this is the picture that I may take. Well, I'm going to put the camera up to my eye. I'm going to look through the viewfinder. A, the goat is not looking at me. B, the shadow becomes somewhat of a distraction. But the biggie is the background. The background is a huge distraction. Well, if you notice, between the goat's legs, there is a little crevice that if you're a photographer with a camera there, you can get down lower. And let's explore that possibility. So, like I said, explore all possibilities, exhaust all of those possibilities, and let's see what you might be able to get. Well, adjacent to this opening, there was another one just a little bit behind me, and that's what I got. So the difference between standing here and getting down lower provided this difference in the image. So again, exhaust all possibilities. What can you do to change it up to make it better and work your subject? All right, again, from where do I shoot? We talked about the concept of getting down low when you make pictures. So here's a wood duck. These are going to be two different wood ducks that I'm going to show you here. But again, you get to up to Stern Park. Oh my gosh, there's that wood duck. I got to get that shot. Look at those colors, look at the whatever. And then you get home and you look at the pictures and you go, oh, what's that stick that's going through its beak? What about all of these distractions that are going on in the background? What about the time of day? What about the highlights on the bottom part, white, that are blown out? Oh gosh. Why didn't I do something different? Why didn't I maybe raise the camera even higher? Why didn't I get myself down lower? Why didn't I move to my left? Why didn't I move to my right? Why? Because you got so excited that you came across the wood ducks. Control your emotion, control that, oh my gosh, look what I've got in front of me, and start to think about what you can do to optimize this situation. So in this next picture, like I said, it wasn't the same wood duck, but in this case, got down low, waited patiently for two things. One is for the head angle to be at an optimum vantage point. So you got the head fully in profile and even a little bit turned toward you. I waited for it to also do something more than just have its feathers all tucked in, and serendipitously have those things happen simultaneously. You can see I'm lying on my belly. The foreground is that little out of focus band of grass. Some may like it, some may not. But the water, that's not sky in the background. That's the blue water from Stern Park. So, again, exhaust all possibilities. Get down high, get up high, get down low, move to your left, move to your right. Try a different lens. Try using flash, try taking the flash off, but experiment. What can you do?
The other thing you got with this one here too is like when as you're now working on composition, and that's part of the discussion in that, but just where the bird's bill is, the separation there between the feathers below that, and then
Yes.
the separation on that. What really caught my eye was the separation on the back of its head, a little bit of separation right there before it gets down to the feathers on its back. Amazing.
Right. And you see all the blue behind it. I mean, it's the little details that are going to make or break the picture. And wait. I can't tell you how many times I've been in front of a fantastic subject and wanting to press the shutter, desiring to press the shutter, wishing I could press the shutter. But if the animal is looking away, if the animal's butt is facing me, if the background is awful, if the light isn't doing what I want it to do, if my flash isn't working the way I want it to work, whatever, I don't take the picture. And I've learned to get to that point where if you're, and not to bring up a negative thing, but if the horse is already dead, it's just the analogy that I bring up all the time for some reason. If the horse is dead, giving it another needle to euthanize it isn't going to make it any deader. So if the picture is not good, taking 50 shots of it isn't going to make it good. You've got to wait. You've got to be patient. As much as you want to be able to take that picture of that cheetah running right at you, if it's everything isn't coming together perfectly, it's not going to be a good picture. Whether you Whether you take no pictures or whether you take 400 pictures, what are you going to do with them if the situation isn't good? So I've learned to accept. I think that's a good word. Learn to accept the fact that if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. And filling a 128 gig card with pictures of that animal isn't going to net you a good image, if you catch the analogy. Okay, leave room for the subject. More with composition. Leave room for the subject to gaze across the image, not have its line of sight bump up on the edge of the frame as in this photo. So in this shot of the impala, the face and the direction in which it's looking, everything is weighted heavily to the right-hand side. When that happens, you get tension. Tension is created when that direction in which the subject looks comes in contact with the edge of the frame, which is what's happening here. Look at all the room behind it. There's plenty of room behind it. Look at all the room in front of it, the direction in which it's looking. No, boom. Its eyes are going to hit right on that edge of the frame, and it's not the best placement. It's not the best position. If the animal looks across, as in this one, where there's a lot more room, here the gaze feels very comfortable. And it's a much better image. Notice that in both images, the background is out of focus. It's not a busy background. If these animals were in the forest, if these animals were in a busy environment, I wouldn't have made these pictures to show as examples, because you still want to try to adhere to the concepts that are going to give you a good image, a positive image. So here on the left-hand side, you've got the shot where the gaze bumps up against the right edge. On the right-hand side, the gaze goes across and works well. Ideally, what you want is the animal to be looking right toward you and provide breathing room for it to look, for it to possibly walk, possibly run, possibly jump, fly, or whatever kind of movement it displays, as in something like this. So the cheetah cub is up on this perch and it's looking out towards the angle where there's a little bit more room over on the side. I got down low. Why did I get down low? Because I didn't want the horizon line going through the legs of the cheetah, the body of the cheetah. So, rather than standing up at the top of the vehicle, I got down and put my head out the window and got the shot from the low angle. And again, think of those things. Where is it going to create tension? Where is it going to create something uncomfortable? How can you rid that from happening? Even before you make one shot, look at the back of your camera and say, ooh. And then by the time you rectify what's happened, the subject is moved. So try to kind of put all of that information together in the beginning. Hey, I still make tons of mistakes. You're never going to always get it right. And if you do, you're a liar because it's just not going to happen. There's going to be pictures when you're going through them, you're going to delete them because they're not as good as a different one. So Just see if you can get to that point more quickly. That's your goal. Head angle. Oh my gosh. The connections are super important. It's essential, absolutely essential that the subjects or subject faces or turns toward the camera. The head angle is critical, absolutely critical. So here we've got a white ibis down in Florida. It's looking out of the frame. It's not making eye contact with the subject. It's past perpendicular. If it was perpendicular, it would be looking 90 degrees from you, but it's past 90 degrees. If it's 90 degrees, 85 degrees, 80 degrees, etc., fantastic. If it's 92 degrees, 95 degrees, 100 degrees, wait, be patient, wait, be patient. Here, there were a couple of things that happened. The ibis turned toward it, and then it did this, the fluffing behavior. It's called rousing, where it rouses to kind of fluff up its feathers, and it makes a head angle. The blue in the eye pops. The blue against the orange works really well, and the moment is, it's a good moment, and it all comes together. Hey, sometimes that moment occurs. Quite often, that moment doesn't occur. Some days you're going to go out and the moment occurs all the time. Other days you're going to go out saying, oh man, I've got this golden streak going. And you come home, you've taken 5 pictures because nothing comes together. You just never know. And that's why you go out. Nothing is a guarantee in photography. Composition, more with composition. And this time we're going to talk about patience and the decisive moment. What is the decisive moment? The decisive moment is that split second when everything falls into place. Patience is that time frame that evolves waiting for that decisive moment to occur. Here was a situation, mama wood duck with a bunch of babies, beautiful reflection, still very nice morning light. This log was in the water. Mama used it for the babies, and everything was very, very still. Okay, so what's going on here? We've got subjects that are turned away from the camera. We've got subjects that are to the left of the mama, to the right of the mama. We got subjects that are merging. We got subjects that the cohesiveness, although it's a family portrait, it's not ideal as the way everything comes. Sometimes serendipity shines. Sometimes it doesn't. At those moments when it all shines, it's pretty special, guys. And you just never know. And the fact, this is, to me, one of those times when the butt shots work because of the one right on the end. If it was the one in the middle turning, but everything just kind of fell into place. And it was one of those moments. And I just kind of looked up after pressing the shutter on high-speed motor drive to get that best one. And you never know. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you look up, say thank you. And at that point, you go home because it just doesn't get any better.
Yeah, look at that,
But-
just the amazing triangle and the on that last image. Yeah, just the shape, right? The triangle formation. And you're right, the one right on the very far end is looking back right at the point of that triangle. That's amazing.
And he looks to be the youngest too. He looks to be, doesn't he have that little, I mean, that there's something about he or she is, there's this adorableness about that little baby wood duck, that the baby duckling there. And it just, and the other thing is that they're, except for the two on the left that are barely touching each other, there's this, I mean, everything, it was just, here's where you've got, a photographer needs to be just like a successful doctor. And what I mean by that is a successful doctor will have a lot of patience. I try to make jokes sometimes. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But, so here, you have your patience, and it works, and everything just comes together. I mean, even the reflection with the baby there, it just,
We were all laughing. We were just on mute that you couldn't hear us.
oh, okay, good. Now I feel better.
Yeah, you had me laughing.
All right, good. All right, so if the background, when so you hear about doing background checks. As a photographer, you also need to do a background check. You need to do a background check of every one of your subjects to make sure every subject is legit. And what happens often is that your subjects will be doing something amazing, but the background is awful. And you just never know. So here we got a bee on this coneflower, and there were a lot of nice things going on here. Here I shot with on-camera flash. You can tell because the background it's pretty dark, but I didn't do anything as far as slowing down the shutter speed or whatever. This was my test shot to see what's going on, but I still encourage you to do the background check. You got those reeds or blades of grass forming that right angle behind the bee. You got the out of focus flower petals of the cone flower in the foreground. And it's just, things that are not working. So what I always tell people is the background is equally as important as the subject. I'm going to repeat that. The background is equally as important as the subject. If the background is busy and you've got a beautiful subject in front of it, what's going to happen? The background is going to compete with the subject. If you've got a great subject and the background complements it, 1 and 1 make 2, and it works together. Your goal is to get 2s all the time between your background and your subject itself. So for this image, I moved a few inches. I slowed down the shutter. I got up a little bit higher so that the petals on the coneflower wouldn't be sticking up and be out of focus. Stop down the lens, just another f-stop or 2 to make sure that I got a little bit more depth of field, and still shot with on-camera flash. But because I moved the shutter speed down, it was like a 1.5 stops or something. So instead of a 2/50th, I may have gone down to 100th of a second, and picked up some color and some interest in the background. And by taking control of the situation and knowing what it is that you want to do to get the end result you want, I'm going to say that again, knowing what it is that you have to do to get the end result that you want, not by hoping that it will happen, but by taking charge, because these are the settings that you need to apply in order to make that happen. This is what you get instead. You've got to learn how to control the situation. Cameras are getting ridiculously intelligent. The thing that they've yet to do is connect them to your brain so that your what it is that you wanted to do will automatically translate to the camera's settings. That hasn't happened yet. When that happens, photography is everybody's going to be a great photographer. But until that happens, we're still young enough to be at that point where I feel a lot of you guys know how to take control of the situation. So if you're not doing it 100% of the time, start doing it 100% of the time. More about a background check. The background should not draw the viewer's eye away from the main subject. In this image of the marmot, that clean blue sky lets the subject pop right off the screen, and it works. There's nothing, there are no rocks competing behind it. There are no out of focus mountains competing behind it. The marmot it's a shot of the marmot against the blue sky perched on a rock. It's easy to discern what it is that's there. Now, what could be a distraction? Bright spots that command the attention, as in that previous shot of the bee on the coneflower in the before image. Let's see what else. All right, so we got the heron, but it's on, look at the perch it's on, and you can see where it is. So I moved a little bit to the left, and I still needed to clone some of that reflected vegetation out of the background. But look what happens when you compare it to the shot on the left. The shot on the right, it's clean. It's a heron on a perch against the water. And the head angle is proper. Okay, what else? So here we got a bunch of clutter, some messy areas, stuff that it just commands the viewer's eye because it detracts from the bird itself. And in this one, where the bird was perched in a different place, still shot with flash, a little on the highlight side as far as the flash goes. I would rework this at this point of my photography, just to tone it down a little bit. But notice here, it's the bird shot against the background on the perch of that fence post. And you don't have all of the busy distractions going on in the back. All right. Mergers are a biggie. Look what's going on here with the bird and the head of the bird. The head of the bird, which is dark, merges right in with the shadow area on the background. That's referred to as a tonal merge. You don't want an undesired overlapping to occur where you can't tell the difference, or it's difficult to discern the difference between the color of the animal and the color of the background. Let's see what happens with just a small change in position. Move. I mean, look at this was a captive bird when I used to go up to Fort Collins and bring people up there to photograph the birds up at the Rocky Mountain Rehab Program. And we'd bring people up there, people would make donations, and it would go to their food and all. And it was great because we all got to shoot these raptors, but they all had jesses and leashes. So you had to hide them. So we used foliage and things like that. But if you notice, you can see that I moved maybe 2 feet to my left and got this whole, and got up a little bit higher, and now there's no tonal mergers going on in the background. The background environment where the bull elk was wandering, littered with hundreds of very brightly lit fallen trees. I followed him until we were both in this position where the background prevented somewhat of a merger here. It was really bad in the previous one. Okay, so let's take a look at composition as far as I can't see, my notes are covered up by the text here. Well, you can see the 3 slides they built automatically, but avoid placing the subjects in the center of the image. Let me see if I can go back here. Yeah. So here we got the giraffe along with the acacia tree, not in the center of the photo itself. If you fill the frame with the subject, place important parts in PowerPoints, and the PowerPoints are going to be more. Let's get this to. Here we go. So we got the fox off in that right-hand third, which is where you want it to be. And then you've got the tern skimming across the water placed on that left-hand side. So the more subject, as far as the to use depth of field to get that background out of focus, the more a subject is magnified, the longer the lens, the easier it is to throw the background out of focus. For the pronghorn here on the left, I used a lens at f4, a long lens at f4 to defocus the vegetation behind it. So what happens as a result? The pronghorn portrait stands out against the out of focus screen in the background. In the image of the bighorn, I used a medium telephoto, but because the subject is a lot bigger now, and the background was still so far away, it falls out of focus and provides what's known as an environmental portrait. For the moose, what I did here is I dropped down to my knees and I added flash. You can see subtly, look at the shadow formed underneath the moose's right eye by the antler. Had I not used flash, it would have been black and you wouldn't have seen the eye. It was close enough where I was able to still incorporate the use of the flash. For the barn owl, this was one of the ones taken up at Rocky Mountain Rehab. I used a wide open aperture with the fact that the barn owl, we placed this perch far enough away from the out of focus cottonwoods in the background so that it became a wash of fall color. And I used a very, very subtle fill flash in here. You can see by the position of those 2 little highlights in the barn owl's eyes. And in this shot of the avocet, given the close proximity and the flash, and the fact that I was using a 600 millimeter in order to hold focus to make sure that important parts remain sharp, because being this close, the depth of field with the 600, I had to stop the lens down to f11. Had I used f4, I wouldn't have acquired that necessary depth of field to hold focus, but the green was just far enough away to still go out of focus. So you've got to kind of process what aperture, what focal length, how far is the subject from the background, put all those pieces of the puzzle together. And once you do that, you'll you learn those little nuances, you'll be able to pretty much know how the picture is going to turn out prior. You may have to tweak it a little bit. You may have to adjust it a little bit, maybe move back a foot, maybe move up a foot, maybe stop the lens down or open it up a little bit. But the more you're out there shooting, the more you'll learn what that end result is going to be. Use shutter speeds to your advantage. Logically, it's necessary to use a fast shutter speed to freeze the motion of a fast-moving subject. The faster the action, the higher the needed shutter speed. So both of those two shots of the snow geese, those were shot using high shutter speeds. I set my aperture to wide open to get as fast a shutter speed as possible. And as a result, got the wingtip sharp, got the beak open in this particular one, and used the light to make the image a little bit more interesting.
Hey, Russ, real quick on when you talk about shutter speed and the importance of that, obviously to get
Okay.
that sharp like that on the birds in flight. Are you using that? Are you going fully manual with that, or are you using like shutter priority with a low aperture, or what's your typical way of doing that?
Okay, so the process that I used on that, I shoot 90% aperture priority.
Okay.
Okay, because I know that that's going to make my shutter speed float.
Right. Yep.
Okay. Now, at a wide open aperture, which is what I knew was going to occur because I set it to f4, long lens set to f4.
Right.
I got it netted a particular shutter speed. If it netted, say, 1,000th of a second, a 7/50th of a second, and I know that I needed a 2,000th or a 3,000th of a second, what can I do to get that faster shutter speed if my aperture is locked and it gives me a set shutter speed of a 7/50th?
So you're adjusting the ISO then.
Exactly. There you go.
To get to solve for the shutter speed, right?
Absolutely perfect. Great. Well done, Mike. Because what you need to do there is realize, all right, if my aperture is set and I need a different shutter speed, what can I adjust to get that? If you know that it's the ISO, you adjust it accordingly, raise it up from 200 to 400. That's going to give me from a 1,000th to a 2,000th. If a 2,000th is enough, I'm fine.
Thank you. Perfect answer. Yep.
Okay. So in this case, using a slow shutter speed can also provide interesting results with animals on the go by using the technique of panning. During one of my Yellowstone trips, there was this 2-minute stampede. And I was just telling everybody, oh my gosh, do fast shutter speeds, do slow shutter speeds, pan with them, zoom with them. I mean, we were doing everything. It was just nonstop action. And in this one just worked out beautifully. What you hope for is a lot of movement that's going on with the feet the legs, with the body because it's going across, but the head isn't bobbing up and down at all. And if the panning is following the movement exactly on a tripod now, exactly at the same direction the animal is running, whether it be a horse, whether it be a cheetah, whether it be birds, you name it. When everything falls into place, it can just be a spectacular image. And this one just, I mean, it just, I couldn't have asked for anything nicer as far as what it is that I got. So that worked out well. All right. Don't overlook the environmental shot. Lots of times, just because you're shooting wildlife doesn't mean you have to shoot it with a wide angle lens. So, here we are in the Ngorongoro crater. We had beautiful morning light. This elephant was, not really doing anything, but here it gives that beautiful sense of location. So I call it the environmental portrait. And the shot with the jumping cheetah, I wish that it was turned, just a little bit more. But the fact that these guys were jumping this little stream river, and it was underneath the rainbow, I just had to include this one. And it still shows that environmental shot. I mean, to be photographing wildlife with a 80 millimeter lens or a 50 millimeter lens and getting decent photos. No complaints about that. Here's another one. A lion taken down at the Ndutu area down by Lake Massac. And the reason why we were actually down here is that's my favorite acacia tree. And we always photograph sunrise. So we got to the sunrise location, and we could see, because this tree is actually backlit at sunrise. The sunrise was doing more than what it is we saw was going to happen, because the sun was going to go right into those clouds behind the tree. And there was this pride of lions. And we decided, let's go do the lions. Another reason why we decided to let's go do the lions, this is one of the very few places when we're photographing that we get out of the vehicle to photograph the tree, because you want to work the little nuances of where the sun is coming up behind the acacia. Well, to create a healthy situation when there's a pride of lions around, you don't want to get out of the vehicle. So we decided that was another reason to make us say, let's photograph the lions instead. So I resorted to environmental portraits, and serendipitously, it turned out when the sun finally did come up, we drove over to the tree, and it really wasn't as good as what it is we had here. So this actually worked out. And then this was in the crater. These are actually it's an invasive species flower, but or weed. They're in April. It's always in full bloom. And we just took advantage of the flowers. And here comes this zebra. And did I shoot some? Did I have another camera right next to me with a zoom lens? Absolutely. And I've got shots of the zebra surrounded in purple. I've got shots of rhinos surrounded in yellow. And it goes back to that expression that I used before, exhaust all possibilities. More with the environmental shot. If the sunrise or sunset is dramatic, show it off. Include animals when you can. Make them your focal point. Draw the viewer's attention. We had the vehicle set up where the gazelle wound up being just in that section of the semi-rain shadow and sun rays that were coming down from the clouds themselves. When the air is still, look for situations where reflections come up. And then if you're down in an area where there are birds, look for birds that fly close to the water. If the bird is flying high above the water, there's going to be too much water separating the actual bird and the reflection. So wait for, and it's difficult to do, especially when the bird has a rapid paced wing flap. But in these egrets, they tend to move their wings fairly slowly. But if you can wait for the downdraft of the wings, because this way it'll be closer to the water, that's another piece that you want to kind of lock onto. And when they fly close to the water and they got their downdraft and it's a calm morning, take advantage. And then the clouds behind this acacia tree with the giraffe, we saw this giraffe. We were actually photographing the acacia tree. And then off to the left, one of the people saw a giraffe. I said, oh my gosh. So we set it up so that we waited. I mean, we drove to this location to just get the giraffe because it was the direction in which it was headed. We waited for it to get right to that spot, and each of us clicked at a slightly different time because you're in a Jeep and you got 3 different positions. So one person clicked, one person clicked, one person clicked. There was just a slight hesitation to wait until that giraffe was in that perfect spot. Some people just clicked away and got the whole thing. And, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that either, because you get different leg positions too. But this was, I took multiple shots, but this one was the one that I just liked the position of where the giraffe's head was offset against the clouds along with that acacia tree. Wait for action. This cheetah was up on one of the copies, the rock outcroppings that are in the Serengeti, and it was taking a nap. We drove up to it. It was still early enough morning light, but the clouds behind this copy, it was one of the situations we said, let's gamble, let's roll the dice, let's see if we can, just wait out the cheetah. And all of a sudden, it just started to wake up and it did this stretch. And, everything just came together. The stretch, the tongue, the open mouth, the raised right foot, the tail in the right position. And, when serendipity happens, you just don't complain. Here we had the flamingo, and here you're capturing the portrait and the action. So here it is preening, but what happened, which was really nice, is the feathers, those 2 feathers that raised right up in front of the flamingo's head that framed the eye. Had it overlapped the eye, it wouldn't have been the same. Again, another moment of serendipity, and the flamingo, by coming in with a long lens, that background was totally thrown out, and it just provided that nice little color contrast. All right, so whether the subject, it's a prize trophy bull elk, some majestic mountain goat that's kind of royally poised up against a rock outcropping, a goose in flight, or a macro subject, or a duck on a rock. Wait for it to display behavior. So here's this praying mantis. I admit this is a setup. I set it up with flashes, but I was waiting for the mantis. I took a bunch of pictures of the praying mantis on this little sunflower, but I just waited for something to happen, and all of a sudden it started to preen. Whether the animal is tiny or whether the animal is big, a lot of the behaviors are going to be the same. Here, this animal is preening. It's cleaning itself. It just happens to be a praying mantis. Do you see it often? No, because the subject itself is so small. But when it does display behavior, it becomes a little bit more intriguing. Someone asked earlier about the Mandarin duck, and this was the Mandarin duck that was hanging out around by Stern Park. What it did, I thank this Mandarin duck for multiple reasons. It's done well in competition, but it also provided something for me that has netted me literally, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of pictures that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So I went up to Stern Park. That's where he was hanging out. And I specifically went up there to photograph the Mandarin duck. All right. Well, you can see by the light, it's getting a little bit high. What did I do? I put on the flash. Well, he still kept swimming around in the water and not really doing too much. Next thing I know, he comes waddling to the bank, and he starts walking across the grass. And around Stern Park, there are some rocks. Well, this guy just hops up onto a rock. And what did he do? He starts to preen. So meanwhile, because he got out of the water, I'm saying to myself, okay, it's time to pack up. Well, all of a sudden, I saw him get out of the water and kind of waddle around. I said, well, this is different. Every shot that I've gotten so far, he's been in the water. So he comes on out, gets up on the rock, and starts to preen. And I say, Now, meanwhile, my 80-400 lens and my flash and the camera were back in my camera bag. Well, I opened up the camera bag and I put the flash back on the camera, and you mounted the 80-400 and just came in, fairly tight on him. And he's preening away because that red bill, I wanted to emphasize that red bill. Well, he's preening and preening and preening. Well, next thing I know, he's preening down where he is in this feather area. And no exaggeration, for 2 seconds, he does this thing where he flared his head feathers and then puts them back. But I was set up. I think I got 2 shots off. And I said, oh my God. I was afraid. I was literally afraid to look at my LCD because I didn't know if I got it or not, because I had just basically reset everything up and said, hey, you never know. So I looked at the back and I was like, again, looked up at the sky, said thank you. And it was one of those moments. So that's a long story to tell you that the reason why I've gotten many, many good photos because of this moment was I created my 5-minute rule. Since that happened, without fail, if I'm on a trip, if I'm on whatever, and even my guy in Tanzania, he's developed it, and we look at each other and we go 5-minute rule, and we say 5-minute rule, and I can't tell you how many pictures we've gotten that have been really, really good images because we wait 5 minutes. So I encourage you to adopt the 5-minute rule because you never know. Now, will something happen at that 6th minute? Once I get to the 5th minute, I don't look at the subjects. I just pack up my camera because I don't want to know. Because my 5-minute rule could turn into a 2-hour rule, and I could, never get home. But it's something that is use it. You use it. You'll think about it when you get that first good shot. In summary, get low, get to the level of your subject, use depth of field to your advantage. Think about the techniques and tools I've discussed to decipher everything that I have told you about, and I encourage you to incorporate all of those things into your images. Write them down in your head each time you go out into the field. All right. So first thing is use depth of field to your advantage. Use backlight to add drama to your images. It's a great way if you want to do silhouettes. One of your other subjects I heard for your competitions is silhouettes. So now you got silhouettes and getting down low. Tap your patience gene. Wait for that moment when everything comes together. It doesn't last long, and I guarantee you, if you ask the animals to repeat it, they're not going to do it. If you don't get it, they're not going to repeat it if you miss it. Use flash. Here I set up 2 flashes, one from behind the subject, one main light, and this, I said, is a total setup. These flowers were taped to the tip of a hummingbird feeder. So the hummingbird was going up to the feeder, but the flowers hid the tip of the hummingbird. If you look closer, you can see those are coral bells. And that the background is a piece of out of focus cardboard. So, those were back in the days when I was doing a bunch of setups and things like that. But use flash to either fill in shadows or as a main light. Be cognizant of your background. Again, the background is equally as important as the subject. Be aware of your aperture, which is going to control the background. Be aware of how far away the subject is from the background, and be aware of what focal length you're using, which will control, in accordance with the aperture, the amount of material that will be in focus in the background. Wait for a good head angle, preferably somewhere between direct eye contact and 45 degrees. Nothing past perpendicular. Use the rule of thirds. Note the rule of thirds here. In this red-headed duck, the eye is in the top third, the eye of the reflection is in the bottom thirds. You can use the rule of thirds for both verticals and horizontals when you create compositions. Go beyond the capture of the animal just standing there. Record interaction, especially when animals, when they create something that's emotional. Wait, be patient. If there's 2 animals, 3 animals, wait for interaction, and for everything to fall into place. Be sure the shutter speed can freeze the action. This was a serval cat in the Ngorongoro crater. It was walking through the grasses, and it was there. It was getting towards dark, and it was overcast. But because I couldn't really see the serval cat, I increased my ISO and waited for the serval cat to do some sort of action. And I just got lucky. I got lucky. The serval cat jumped to pounce on whatever prey it was trying to get. It was a miss, but by jumping, it got above the grasses, and I was able to get the entire serval cat. Shoot from a low vantage point. Use the sky as a background. The sky as a background is a no-brainer, as the subject will always stand out from, will always just stand out. Use the proper aperture to cover the necessary depth of field to get everything in focus. You can see here, the grizzly is nice and sharp. The foreground grasses are good. The midground grasses are good, but the background trees tend to go out of focus a little bit. What does that tell you? It tells you that the trees aren't as an important a subject as the bear. Therefore, the bear tends to dominate more so. Leave your subject room to move across the frame. Use the rule of thirds. Here you've got the duck, and it's got more room to fly into. It's not butting itself right up, its head right up against the edge of the frame. Work the environmental portrait. Use shorter focal length lenses. You don't have to use a long lens for wildlife. Too many people get caught up in that. Exploit the light early and late in the day. Serendipity with the hartebeest and the rainbow. It's all about the light. Go for the headshot that shows the action of behavior. So in here with the stork was just, all of a sudden preening and shot up against the blue sky. And here it is just kind of getting the dust or dirt off its feathers. And as it wrapped it around, it created a nice bend and a nice curve. Don't forget to include the reflection. When that reflection is good, incorporate it. It works well. Avoid mergers when you're talking important multiple subjects. So we got the two pelicans. The pelicans aren't touching. I got down low enough to the pelican, so the pelican on the right was just separated from the horizon line, and the wingtip didn't merge with the sunset itself. And last but not least, wait for decisive moment to press the shutter. This happened to be right outside in my previous home in Highlands Ranch. There was a bird nest and a blue spruce tree, and I photographed these guys every day. And next thing we knew, what happened was the father brought back a worm. Everybody got excited. They simultaneously all opened up their beak. Even mama was hoping for the worm in this case. And the decisive moment occurred. And that's it, guys. I hope you got at least a couple of tips, a couple of ideas, a couple of thoughts about which to think of what it is that you want to do when you're out in the field. And the beauty about this, you can apply these concepts. It doesn't have to be an animal. it can be people. It can be something that's inanimate. But wait, well, you're not going to get action on an inanimate subject. But as far as mergers go, as far as light goes, as far as composition goes, all of those things apply. So if you have a couple of questions, while my voice is still halfway here, I'll answer them, and let's go from there. So fire away.
And I'll make some other comments here in a second, but there was one question that was out there that Tamara was bringing up the question about which flash was used, and I think probably the answer is not only the flash, but also just I think she might have missed the very beginning part of it about talking about the modifier you used on that.
Okay, I shoot Nikon gear. I've got an SB 5000 flash, and it's their most powerful flash. And the modifier that I use is called a MagMod that has a Fresnel lens. And with that flash, based on its guide number at if I've got an f4 lens and I'm using it, I can get up to 50 to 60 feet and still have it impact. Now, that's in bright sun. I'm sorry, in overcast. If it's bright sun and I got to stop down to f11, no. If it's bright overcast and I can get f4, I can get out 50 to 60 feet.
Great.
So it's a great setup.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, my question for you, Russ, is you hear me?
Yes, I got you.
Yeah, my question for you is does the flash affect the animals at all?
Zero.
Zero.
You know, I've okay, let's put it this way. When you think about flash and its duration, okay? Now, you're firing a flash in daylight, all right? At a duration of maybe 10,000th of a second, could be a 20,000th of a second. It could be a 1,000th of a second. You know, you don't know, but think about, and this is what made me say, you know what, if I was an absolute purist, I wouldn't do it. But when I logically process this, the duration of the flash, you're in daylight, animals in the wild experience lightning at night that lasts a whole heck of a lot longer. When you see a bolt of lightning, all right, that's going to affect an animal a whole heck of a lot longer than a flash going off in midday. So, not that I want to force to justify what it is that I'm doing, but when I analyze it with that logic, I am never seeing an animal even one iota react in a negative way to the flash. I feel very comfortable using it. And I'm not one that's going to abuse wildlife.
Yeah, I was going to say that was a great question, Carino, because I had that written down also in that, and a fantastic answer. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking that they're used to lightning. You know, they're out there in that kind of thing. So I was equating that, and so your answer just confirmed what I was thinking in the back of my mind as far as why they flash wouldn't affect them. So
right. Other questions?
So Russ, you're one of the reasons I truly suck at wildlife photography is I have zero patience, and obviously you have a lot. But let me just ask you, you know, you talked about getting the animal in the right position, waiting, no butts, a whole bunch of stuff. Have you ever gone out there and just not shot anything? I understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really?
I've gone out there. I've been, I mean, most of my stuff. Okay, so I've done everything. When I started off, my introduction to real nature photography was through scenery. And if I saw an animal, I said, wow, oh wow, hey, I got a shot of a bear. And meanwhile, it's hidden somewhere behind the bush and everything like that. But so I didn't really show them off, but it started with scenery. And then it evolved. And then I started doing these. I got involved with the Raptor Rehab program up at Fort Collins. It's at what was it was C who was I think it was affiliated with CSU. I think so. And it was more to raise money for them and for me to start to learn some wildlife photography because I had, got into photographing wildlife a little bit more, and I love the challenge. And as I did it more and more, I started to realize, wow, this is not easy stuff. You see these beautiful images in calendars, you see, like the competitions and all. You go to a camera club and, the saliva is coming down the side of your mouth because they're just magnificent photos. And I said to myself, I want to be able to do that. I love a challenge. And I said, I want to compete with those people.
Mhm.
And, I made it a goal, so to speak, not as an ego thing, but as let me see if I can. And the more images that I got over which I felt proud, it motivated me more now to get even better and keep on increasing. So what I do now when I go back to the Serengeti is there are a lot of situations where people be photographing like crazy. And I'm not even raising the camera to my eye because I've got in that kind of situation with that particular animal, I know what I've got on my hard drive already that I've optimized. So now I apply that to everything. If I go photograph the wood ducks, for instance, up at Stern, I know what I have. So I limit what it is that I shoot because why shoot something that I know if I've got a prime steak waiting for me at home for dinner, I'm not going to stop off at White Castle first and fill my face because it's not as good. Did you see the analogy there? So I don't shoot it. I don't eat it. I choose not to eat that burger. As much as I used to like White Castle back in the day, now I don't. So
Death burgers.
yeah, belly bombers as they call them.
Hey,
Yeah.
Russ, do you use, I don't remember if this was asked, but do you use TTL on the flash? Is that
I do. It's 100. The flash is 100% TTL, and
Okay.
it does an amazing job. And this is back. I'm not using mirrorless. So I know the gear that I have inside out. Now, is it going to allow me to get, like with eye focus on birds and flight and everything like that? No. There are certain subjects that I know I'm not going to go after. But for me, at this point in my life, to invest in a mirrorless system and be anal the way I am, as I'm not going to go out and shoot unless I know it as well as I know my current system. And it's taken me years to get to know my current system the way that I do. I'm happy using my D500s with the SB 5000, and it works. It works well. You know, Ansel Adams got great stuff with single sheets of film.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it looks like the gear hasn't held you back from catching amazing images. So
Yes.
yeah, okay, think about this. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, let's say just pre-digital. Look at some of the pictures that you saw when you're looking through calendars, that you're looking at competitions. These people are those people were shooting that on rolls of 36 with an ISO of 100. And some of those were drop dead gorgeous.
mhm.
You know,
Yeah. I was gonna say you're clearly not a spray and pray kind of guy with those recycle times on the flash. You're definitely a precise sniper shooter that comes with a lot of practice, I imagine.
patience, Dave.
Yeah.
it comes.
I don't have.
Right. Yeah. So that's that's kind of the bottom line. You know, you learn, you see the subtleties, you wait, and like I said, it's going to make you one of the quote unquote luckier ones.
Yeah, it's what I've gained from this talk is a couple things, just set everything up, know what you're doing in advance. What did Louis Pasteur say? Chance prefers the prepared mind. So he's got that all, in advance. And then being at my age, when I fall and I can't get up, make sure that I have my camera down there because it's great shots from down below.
Maybe that's how that all evolved. Some old guy fell and took a picture from down there and said, "Oh my God, this is great." Yeah. If you can pre-visualize what you're going to get and know, here's the key aspect, Dave, is that you pre-visualize. Here's my subject. This is what I want to get. What settings do I have to utilize on the camera in order to get those? The point that I brought up during the show, if cameras can start to know what it is that you want and create those settings for you, to me, photography it's done. Because you're not doing, there's no skill in it. Well, I shouldn't say there's no skill, but it's really taking away the skill factor and the fact that you got to learn, because it'll do the work for you. I still want to feel good that I had a hand in creating this by knowing I got to use a flash. I shouldn't use a flash. This is the aperture that I need to have. Is that animal too close to the background and the background is really distracting? Let's move on to another subject. Why waste time here? It's those kinds of things. And you look at it, you pre-visualize, and you say, this is what I want. Here's what I have to do. Mm-hmm. RTFM. Read the manual.
Yeah, even if you
Okay.
don't follow it, you have to read it, right?
You got to read it, right? You've got to know what your camera can do and how to make it do those things so that you can pre-visualize and hopefully put it all together before the animal vacates the spot. Ideally, all the animals would be as cooperative as the shot that I set up with the before and after of the light on that lion.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, then you could, but you know what? They're not going to do that. They're going to do like the Mandarin duck, whoop, done. And that's it. And if you don't, you say, oh, and then you see it happen. Please do it again. Please do it again. And you could be, sitting there for, 3 days waiting for it to do it again. And it doesn't do it. So you never know. Anybody else?
Russ, thanks. It's a great presentation. I appreciate you stepping in at the last minute for us.
Hey,
Yeah.
if I have the time, if I've got the date open, I don't mind. I love to teach. I spent 27 years of my life doing it. And you know what? If I can help somebody improve what it is that they want to get better in, then I did my good deed for the day. So it's all
I'll
good.
add to that too, is that I love your catchphrases, and that patience exhausts all possibilities. Background is fully as important to the subject, and so forth, and that. But I have seen a couple of your other presentations, and always every single time I learn a handful of new things and that. But I will say that it's from some of your presentations before that a lot of those very things go when I'm out photographing wildlife, and I'm out photographing whether it's birds, mountain goats, whatever it might be. I'm constantly remembering some of the things that have come up in your previous presentations. Look for that separation. Look for the, obviously the light, the time of day, and all those things.
Get down a little lower.
Get down a little lower. Right. So, and doing that. So, and sometimes it is, just making that, don't hold the camera at eye level all the time. Go down low, go up, wherever you can, move side to side, make sure that you get that composition right. But it really is. I mean, I know in my case, my nature photography is benefited greatly from the past presentations that you've provided. So I'm glad tonight that we had some people who I think have not seen your presentations before, and I'm sure they learned quite a bit. So
okay,
yes,
well, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. That's it makes me feel good that you're walking away with stuff that's going to benefit, and that's why we do what we do.
Right. And you might have just signed yourself up for being the judge for our Get Down Low competition, whatever that is.
Did I already volunteer for that?
He's gonna be. I think I'm out of town that week. Pretty sure.
Yeah.
Or the silhouette one.
I've
right?
fallen and I can't get up.
That's right.
What is it? Was that the clapper?
No, that was the life alert.
Life alert. That's right. Yeah.
Oh, speaking
the
of which,
clapper, that was the light. Yeah.
Totally not relevant to all this and that, but we were talking earlier about falling and all that. I was out in the mountains this last week, and literally I fell on my back, and my watch told me, "It looks like you fell hard. Do you need assistance? SOS." And fortunately, I didn't have to push that button, but it was there. So,
well, yeah, it's good that we have the technology.
Right.
Please don't ever get to the point where you need to use that.
That's right.
Right.
That's
And you kept saying, "No, gosh darn it, I'm taking some photos. Quit
yeah,
me I've fallen."
Yeah, leave me alone. I got it. Oh, you see, the animal moved. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Russ.
Thank you again. Wonderful.
Thank you,
All
Russ.
right.
All right, everybody.
Hey.
We'll see everybody in person at the November 6th meeting, unless something changes. Have a good night, everyone.
All
Good
right, guys,
presentation.
take care. Thanks for the
Right.
invite.